And thanks for joining us here on PM Express. On the show tonight, we have two packed different segments for you, and you really don't want to miss any one of them. The first one, of course, is the biggest story today that has really reverberated across political lines based on the Supreme Court verdict. EC declaring James Gyakye swearing in illegal, null and void. That's the first quick part of 30 minutes. We will get into that, understand the implications of this. The by-election is about to happen. A lot of legal issues that we need to discuss and break down for you. We will do that because I know many of you are getting home and wondering what was the biggest story of the day. This was certainly one of them. The second one we brought you yesterday, the anticipation of the IMF Executive Board approval, which indeed came today, as we had predicted yesterday. And so that we know already. You can find a lot more detail on my joyonline.com. I've done an analysis of what is in it for you. Find it there. But we'll go first to this. And then the second, that's what I'm looking forward to. We are going to have in the studio the one guard, a 360 conversation at the chat with Stone Boy. This is going to be fascinating. I'm looking forward to this. This is a man who is on the path to a Grammy. And today we're going to have a conversation with him indeed. So let's get into this. First of all, of course, is the key subject of the James Gyakye issue, which came up in Parliament today, in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court asking that his name be expunged. And from the records there, we know that Gyakye himself, the court hold was not qualified at the time of filing his nomination forms, and so now the NDC is going to be short one person in particular when it comes to Parliament. The Supreme Court also holds that his election was unconstitutional, null and void. The swearing in was unconstitutional as well. Electoral Commission, and this for me is a very interesting part, that the Electoral Commission acted unconstitutionally, and that for me is very, very interesting. So the key question that we need to ask when we sit down for a conversation is, so what does the Supreme Court expect the Electoral Commission to do going forward? So all the 375, possibly 376 candidates times 2 that we will see going into the elections who file, is the Supreme Court suggesting that the Electoral Commission would have to verify every single one of them, their citizenship, before they actually give them the all clear to become candidates and get on the ballot. I mean, we'll try and get clarity on that very important subject for you here on PM Express. And this is a clause that is at the heart of this particular matter with the Supreme Court today. So really, what's at stake? He's lost everything. Everything. What has he lost? He's lost the Canadian citizenship. It's gone because he renounced it somehow, and he's lost that, right? He's also, as we know, will be expelled from Parliament, and so again, he's lost his MP-ship. He can't go there anymore. He is not, as if he's never been a member of Parliament. In fact, that's what it is. And then we know he faces a possible criminal charges and jail term. The question is, will the Attorney General pursue this particular matter? We don't know. But there are big questions that we need to explore. But there's a by-election. Question is, does he qualify to contest in a by-election? And many people say, why would the NDC look beyond him? Because if you look at his performance in the last elections, it wasn't that bad. 17,498 votes he garnered against the MPPs. Evans Mensah, who has 14,000. He's very popular in the constituency. Can you use a victim mentality to get some sympathy votes in there so that you can shoot this up? We're going to have a conversation. Does he even qualify to stand in the by-election that is most certainly about to happen? We're going to sit down for a conversation right now, shortly. Please stay with me. After that, then we go to have the one guard 360 conversation with Stone Boy. We're going all the way to 10:30, and you don't want to miss a thing. PM Express on the road after this short break. And thanks for staying with us. In the studio with me is Frank Davis. And Frank Davis is the chairman of the Constitution and Legal Committee of the MPP. Mr. Davis, thanks for your time. You rarely walk into studio, so I'm happy that you're here.
Well, you're the only one who can push me.
Well, I'm happy I did a small nudge and then you agreed to come. Joining us via Zoom right now is the Director of Legal of the NDC, the main opposition NDC. He is Abraham Amaliba. He joins us on Zoom. Mr. Amaliba, I'm grateful also that you agreed to join us, because there are many people tonight who've heard the news, but they want to get to the bottom of really what happened. So let's try and see if we can do that. Let me start with a very basic point. James Gyakye himself has issued a statement in which he says that the EC inspected his renunciation certificate in November 2020 prior to allowing him to contest elections. In fact, he maintains that he was duly qualified to run according to the EC regulations. He says, bottom line, this is gross injustice done him.
Good evening to your viewers, listeners all over the world, and thanks for the opportunity. I didn't want to go to the past, but I think Gyakye himself doesn't understand what he did. And it's unfortunate that he was misled and misinformed by those who sought to advise him. The process of filing your nominations preparatory to your being a parliamentary candidate is not an event. It's a process. The EC opened the nominations from the 5th, if I recall, 5th to the 10th of November.
This is 2020.
Okay. And the dictates are clear that at the time you fill out the nomination forms, you should be a Ghanaian. You should not owe allegiance to any other country than Ghana. Now, Gyakye put in his application to renounce his citizenship sometime before October.
Okay.
But at the time he filled his nomination forms, his application was in process. He had not received his certificate of renunciation.
Okay.
So from the get-go, yes, he didn't qualify. It was only in November that he had his certificate of renunciation.
Okay.
If you apply for...
But when was it granted by... When was that?
November. You apply to renounce. The authorities peruse your application.
So the effective date on the certificate was
November.
And when he filed to contest in Ghana was?
In October. If you apply, Evans, if you go to the passport office and you apply to be issued a passport, and you apply in January, and your passport is not ready, you can go to the airport. You can go to KIA and say, I want to travel because I've put in my application for a passport. And the passport will be issued sometime. I apply in January, the passport will be issued in February or March. So this is my evidence that I've applied for the passport. So let me go. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Let's take a very literalist view of it.
Yeah, but that is what happened.
But possibly, I mean, the man clearly was on the path to renouncing. He was determined to do so and has shown taking steps to do so.
We should understand this thing. It does not admit of any other interpretation. You can skew it any way you want to, but the law is that at the time you file your nomination, you should be a Ghanaian. You should not owe allegiance to any other country. So whether you started the process or not, you are not a Ghanaian. I mean, you have not renounced your citizenship. So he didn't qualify. Now, the defenses they put up in the High Court was that because of bureaucratic and administrative hitches and because of COVID and all that, the process. So if you knew that you needed to get the certificate and you didn't get it, why would you cry that it is injustice? What is injustice about it? Well, no, what is the injustice? If you apply to be issued a passport, don't you wait for the passport to be issued before you travel? Don't you wait to get the passport? Or would you say, or you go to any consulate, you walk in and say, because I have applied for a passport, issue me with a visa? I mean, that's pretty ridiculous and absurd. So it's got nothing to do with whether he applied yesterday and he was waiting. You should have renounced your Canadian citizenship before filling your nomination forms. That is what the law says. So I don't see what other interpretation we can place on it.
Okay. Let me bring Abraham Maliba in. Mr. Maliba, so this is open and shut then, is it not? And the reason why the Supreme Court has come to this inevitable conclusion that as at the time that he filed to contest, he did not have the certificate that shows that he had fully renounced that citizenship. So when there's a suggestion that this is injustice, strictly speaking in black and white, this is just what the law says should happen, is it not? And that many will say Gyakye brought this on himself. He could have started the process way before, knowing obviously that he intends to contest.
Nowhere did we say at the High Court that it was because of COVID that he never got his renunciation certificate. At the High Court in Cape Coast, our line of argument was that we disagree with the timeline given by the plaintiff. What we indicated was that the timeline, the cutoff point, is at the time of elections and not at the time of nominations. And we quoted the People's Representation Act, Section 20, which says that a person who is desirous to become a member of parliament must be qualified at the time of elections, not at the time of nominations. And we quoted Section 20 of that law. So we did never said that it was because of COVID. And so that must be made clear. I think your initial question was about the role played by the EC in giving the member of parliament a clean bill of health, because the EC inspected his documents and gave him the clean bill of health. Now, in this judgment of the Supreme Court, what punishment have they given to the EC? How can you visit the sense of the EC on the member of parliament who openly gave out his documents for scrutiny? And I think your question is predicated on that. What does the Supreme Court say about the EC? And I think that is where the discussions are. And I think that clearly the EC would have misled him to do what he did. In any case, in the example he gave about the passport, when you get to the Kotoka International Airport, no plane will pick you. The plane will not allow you to go and sit in the plane and travel. So why did the EC allow him? That's the question you are asking. And I think that is where the miscarriage of justice comes in.
And that point he makes, Frank Davis, is one that had come up quite strongly. This EC thing. The Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional for the Electoral Commission to have allowed him to go ahead and contest when they didn't see the proof that he had actually done so. Isn't that being unrealistic to expect the EC now to all 275 plus 2 times 2 candidates must be now be probed by the EC?
Evans, we should not attempt to rewrite the script. I was with Maliba in the High Court in Cape Coast. Before, with great respect to him, I used this diction advisedly. Before he fled the case in courts, I was with him in the High Court before he fled, and another lawyer took over. All right? You see, we should not mix the issues. The EC never misled Gyakye. As part, excuse me. Evans, you want to be educated, so wait and be educated. All right? It doesn't lend itself to common sense. It's strict law, no.
Mr. Farah, the fact that he went ahead to contest.
You were supposed to swear to a statutory declaration. Okay? The EC will not hold your hand to swear to that statutory declaration. It is your own deed. In fact, if Maliba will stick to fidelity of the matters that happened, his own constituents brought a petition against him.
Sponsored by the MPP, many say.
What?
Sponsored by the MPP.
Well, that is your definition. Whether it was sponsored by the MPP or whatever, they brought a petition against him, his own people. The petition was sent to the EC. Now the EC asked him whether you have renounced your Canadian citizenship. He said yes.
This was in evidence in court?
You can ask Kamaliba. He said he had renounced.
So the EC actually had an opportunity to.
Yes, so the EC said if you claim you have renounced your citizenship and you have sworn to a statutory declaration, that is where our mandate ends. Because you know it is clear that if you want to file, the process to become a parliamentary candidate starts from the filing the nomination forms. And the law says that at the time you are filing, you should owe allegiance to no other country than Ghana. You see this thing, Mr. Amali, my friend Amaliba is talking about the People's Representation Law and the time of election. Who said it was the time of election? These were the arguments they canvassed in the High Court. That argument was thrown away. The same arguments were canvassed in the Supreme Court. It was thrown away. So why are we going back? He was not with me in the Supreme Court. His senior Kachikata was there. These were the same arguments they tabled with Teriwaja. It didn't succeed. So why are we going back? Let us tell the people of Ghana what the law is. Don't let us skew these matters for political expediency and all that. Why is he saying the Supreme Court should punish the EC?
But the EC has a role to play here.
And I'm telling you that
the court actually, in this particular ruling, placed a certain burden on the EC that to ensure that the person contesting is qualified to contest.
What burden did they place on the EC?
I mean that the EC, it was unconstitutional for them to allow.
Yes, because those were the reliefs we sought. That at the time the EC permitted him.
Yeah, so the EC should not have allowed him to contest.
But if you go to the EC and you tell the EC you have renounced your citizenship, when you know you haven't done that, you hold the EC responsible? Is that what you're saying?
One of the things that...
I'm asking you, Evans, is that what you're saying?
But the EC has a responsibility, has it not?
But the EC, when the petition was presented, the EC asked him.
But they took his word for it.
Of course.
But the EC should do far more than word for it.
Doing what? But he should have got his certificate of renunciation.
Yeah, that was his part.
Yeah, he didn't.
But as a state institution, that's why you actually asked the court to say that the EC acted unconstitutionally by allowing him. Because in there, you actually acknowledge that the EC had the responsibility to ensure that the Constitution is respected at all times.
Yeah, but
in clearing people.
You see.
So that's a burden on the EC now going forward. To make sure that it's checked.
Evans, if you come to Joy FM, you want to seek employment. And Joy FM, you ask, where did you school? You say, I went to school in Kevas, or I went to Legon or something.
So you can mention your alma mater. I know you like your alma mater.
No. Or you went to, of course, you. And then, at the end of the day, it is realized that you faked your institution. Are you going to hold Joy FM responsible?
Oh, I'll take part of the significant part of the blame, almost all of it.
No. How can you take part of the blame? People have walked around, gone into institutions, paraded certificates that they don't have. It happened recently in this, I think, University of Development Studies.
Yeah, it happens, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you see, it is your word against that of your employer. It was the word of Gyakye. They took him to be someone, excuse my language, who was noble. So if you come to tell us that you have renounced your citizenship, what other burden was on the EC? When he has sworn to a statutory declaration to that effect, what else could the EC have done?
That example you use, it is also incumbent on that organization employing you. After, sometimes they actually give you conditional employment.
No, but at the end of the day,
post that employment, they check.
At the end of the day,
you go.
Evans, whether they give you a post-employment, they give you a pre-employment, whatever, at the end of the day, if you are found to have faked your certificates,
you lose your job.
That's simply how it means.
Okay, but let me,
simple as that.
I get it. But let me ask you that, because part of the reasons why judgments of the Supreme Court are important, it guides us going forward, improving the way we've done things.
Yes.
I want to ask a question about that, because we are approaching another elections next year.
Yes.
This is the second time this has happened in our Fourth Republican history. Yes. So it's time to change something, I guess, use this as an opportunity. Let me ask you, would you expect on the back of, this is just beyond the back and forth, this is about now looking forward to reform, on the back of this, for the Electoral Commission going forward into the next year's elections to adapt another level of verification?
I know where you're coming from.
Yes.
Maybe
should that be part of the process?
Maybe my advice to the EC will be that if any prospective parliamentary candidate comes to say that I have renounced my citizenship, EC should ask for the certificate of renunciation
First, okay.
Because MPP, we went through the same process. I was the chairman of the verification committee. All the prospective parliamentary candidates who came before us, I demanded proof of the certificate of renunciation. If you don't have it, I will not pass.
That is, was that based on a prior suspicion?
Of course, I mean, the same thing happened to our own Adamu Sakandi.
Okay, yeah.
So the questionnaire we had was that if you have renounced your citizenship, provide us with the certificate.
So you see there.
So from the threshold, we had confirmed and verified whatever documents our people brought. So I think going forward, the EC should not take any parliamentary candidate's word for granted. If you say you have renounced your citizenship, let us see the certificate
before they clear you to
of renunciation, before you are cleared.
Okay, let me bring in Abraham. Abraham, so on that subject, and he made a point that in court, evidence was adduced to suggest that the EC actually, even before they cleared him to contest, had an opportunity to ask him again based on a petition, and he affirmed that he's in all clear as far as the certificate is concerned. I mean, that clearly then shows, if that's what happened, and from what I said happened in court, then James Gyakye Singh really has himself to blame.
Sometimes I find it difficult to understand Frank Davis' line of argument. You make an inaccurate statement that we went to court and said COVID. I corrected that one and say that it's not, we didn't, our line of argument or our submission was not based on COVID. It was based on the fact that there is the PNDC law that says that the time of qualification is elections. And then you come back and say, rubbishing it. I don't understand your line of argument.
How can you understand?
We don't do that.
How can you understand?
Now, to your substantive question. You were asking whether haven't appeared before the EC, the James indicated to the EC again that he was qualified. Like you rightly indicated, there was a petition that was sent to the EC. It is upon that petition that he was invited. And when he was invited, he adduced evidence and provided the documentation that suggests that he had put in an application. The EC felt that
we may have a challenge with the Zoom there. Let's hope that we can re-establish contact. Establish contact, and then we can wrap up with him and wrap up in the studio as well. He is back. Okay, Mr. Malwa, we lost you briefly. I understand you're back. Yes, please.
So I was saying that the petition he talked about, that came from the constituency, a youth group. That petition was the base upon which he was invited to the EC. And when he got to the EC, he provided his documentation. The EC looked at the documentation and okayed him and said it was okay for him to go for the election.
But the documentation he provided, was it the certificate of renunciation or the application?
He showed them the application.
Yeah, but that is not what the Constitution requires.
No, I am not talking about, it's not that we are wiser. It's today's judgment that we are wiser.
Oh, please.
But I'm saying that,
Please.
I'm putting it across to you that the EC inspected those documents and gave him the go-ahead. So, shouldn't the EC take part of the blame? That's my point.
Let me ask you.
The institution that is responsible.
Unfortunately, that line is not holding. Let's see if he comes back so I can ask him that bigger question. What are his thoughts on that subject of next year? What should the policy reforms be at the EC in terms of, you've had Frank Davis say EC should demand to see the certificate before they clear. Yes. So as it stands now, this case is done and dusted. Of course, he has said today that he doesn't intend to litigate this anymore. He's leaving it to the court of conscience. But from everything else I've heard, this is not the end of the case because possibly there's an aspect of this that is also criminal. True?
Evans, let me correct certain things that my friend Amaliba said. You see, most of it are not. And with great respect to him, he doesn't try to stick to the issues. I mean, I am repeating for purposes of emphasis that in the High Court, they stated amongst other things that the process, the application to renounce was bottled down by administrative hitches. And they also said the COVID slowed the process. I repeat it.
It was part of their case.
Yes, and unless he wants to indulge in selective amnesia, they said so. I conducted the case from the beginning to the end with him before he left. Now, this issue is talking about time of election. Which part of the Constitution says that? I'm saying those arguments are lame. They have been thrown into the dustbin. So he should not be coming on television and other fora saying all these kinds of things. These were the arguments they preferred, and those arguments were shut down. The law is clear that at the time of the filing of nomination, you should owe allegiance to no other country than Ghana. It didn't say at the time of election. So I wonder why he's still going on with these moribund arguments. Now, this issue of the criminal aspect.
Yeah, the criminal aspect.
Now, if, you see, at a point in time, Gyakye applied for a Ghanaian passport. And when you apply for a Ghanaian passport, one of the questions is to ask whether you are a Ghanaian, meaning if you don't have allegiance to any other country apart from Ghana. Yeah, he said yes. And at the time he applied, he had not renounced his Canadian citizenship.
So at the time he applied for the passport?
Yes, that is the seat of public office. I mean, so what is the crime?
Okay.
And this business of the EC inspected his documents and cleared him. Let's put the matter, you see, nobody should try to hold the EC by the neck. Now, if you know, you put the question rightly to him, if you know you have applied for renunciation, and the governing law of the country of which you are a citizen says that you can only claim that you have renounced your citizenship if you are given the certificate. That is what the law says. That is what the Canadian Citizenship Act says.
You produce a certificate, not
an application. Okay. But if you take an application to the EC and you go and tell the EC that I'm in the process of renouncing my citizenship, I mean, what would the EC do to you? To drive you away?
So the criminal case is still pending?
It is pending.
Okay, and that is one that is being prosecuted by the Attorney General?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have any role
I have no role to play.
Yeah, I understand.
I have done my bit in the Supreme Court.
In the Supreme Court.
It is over.
And as we speak, let me ask you that final question. I asked you earlier, but it's important because it's a by-election that is, you say now, that is the only thing that must happen now. You expect the EC to trigger this process of the by-election immediately?
Well, the EC would have...
Respecting the processes, because...
The EC would have, I mean, the order would be drawn up.
Sent to Parliament.
Order of the Supreme Court would be drawn up. The registrar of the Supreme Court would file a copy to the Speaker, attach the order. And then the Speaker, obviously, would notify the Electoral Commission that the seat is vacant. Within 30 days, the Electoral Commission will have to run a by-election. That's what the law says.
Okay. And then finally, do you think James Gyakye, if he chooses to run a by-election, he can? Nothing stops him, can he?
Even
That's it.
I am not lawyer for Gyakye. I don't run the legal directorate of the NDC. Indeed, my friend Amaliba is the director of legal of the NDC. I am not here to advise Gyakye as to whether he's eligible or not. I think he has enough legal material and men to advise him. The decision for him to contest or not to contest is his, it's not mine.
Let me come back on the line. We lost him briefly. Mr. Maliba, I was asking you, going into the 2024 elections, do you think on the back of what we've just seen in the court, it's time for some reforms at the Electoral Commission, where the Electoral Commission makes this part of the process of verifying the renunciation of prospective candidates?
And I expected the Supreme Court to have made those orders or to have made those proposals to the EC and make it clear, because the role they played here, I would say, contributed to what we are seeing today. Yes, if in law, if it were negligence, we would say that they also contributed to the negligence. And so I expected that kind of that kind of proposal to the EC, to scrutinize and then to know. And by now, the Supreme Court, whose laws require certification for renunciation, and those whose laws will say that, look, immediately you put in the application, is conclusive. There are some countries like that. Once you put in the application, you don't need to wait for a renunciation certificate. So I think, yes, we need the EC to be more vigilant and know some of these laws that are coming from other countries about citizenship. Then also, on our part, we have, in the last election that just passed, the primaries, we have indicated that those who renounce the citizenship before the nominations, and that they lose the right to represent the party if they don't do that. And so we will not present them to the EC if they fail to renounce their citizenship. So we've done those things, and I think that going forward, we may not have some of these things happen.
Okay.
But you see, Evans.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
He's unable to answer the question you asked. The MP, the former MP now, can contest if the elections are to be conducted.
You think he can contest?
Very much so, and he can't answer the question because he knows that the man is popular on the ground, and when he says that, it will go into his credit. So we are clear in our minds that as we speak today, he's not under any disability. There's no law that will deprive him from contesting, and it is clear that if he contests because of his popularity, he will win those elections.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maliba. Is a full judgment out here?
Well, the judgment is not out. The court said the judgment will be ready by the 7th of June. So okay. I would rather advise my learned friend, my very good friend, Maliba, that, I mean, he should hasten slowly in sometimes talking about the work of the Supreme Court. You know, it's the highest court of the land. We should give those judges all the respect that they deserve. He wasn't in court. He wasn't even a lawyer in the matter. The full rendition of the judgment is not out. He doesn't know what the justices have put in there, whether they have advised for the EC, the roadmap going forward. So he should hasten slowly. Sometimes some of these statements, I mean, do not make for public consumption. And I'm happy that my friend Amaliba now is saying that in some jurisdictions, if you apply, then the renunciation kicks in. In others, you have to wait for the certificate. So if he knew that, and he read the Canadian Citizenship Act, why didn't they advise Gyakye that with the Canadian one, you have to wait and get your certificate? It is not just by applying that you are renounced. So I'm happy at the tail end, he himself has come round to accept what we have been saying all along. If you apply for, it doesn't mean you have received a certificate.
Frank Davis, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And that's the chairman of the NPP's Constitution and Legal Committee. You also listened to the Director of Legal for the main opposition, NDC. Up next is Stonebwoy here with me for a conversation. I don't know if you like Stonebwoy.
Oh, I like Stonebwoy.
You like Stonebwoy? Okay, he's outside. We'll shake his hands while he comes in.
Definitely.
Yes, this man he's not. You see the beard in his. Don't take him. He's a very young man. So Stonebwoy is up next. Please stay with me. We are going to have a very exciting conversation with a man who launched recently this very interesting album that has taken the world by storm. And he really is on the trajectory, he believes, towards the Grammys. We're going to have a lot of very interesting conversation. He comes from a Ashaiman, by the way, and I've been interested to hear his thoughts about how music can become a tool to lift a lot of young people from poverty to some form of wealth and employment. Please stay with me. After this, Stonebwoy.